up, Pernell? What's up, Rod? I thank you for joining me, and I want to just start off by saying thank you for what you're doing. And I don't know how many people do know about you. I know about you now. I just got educated on you, and I'm really proud to see what you're doing out there. But for those who don't know, why don't you tell me a little bit about your business and your company and everything else?
Sure. So I'll jump in. This is Rod. So BLK Bold was started about 2.5 years ago. We launched our virtual doors in June of 2018, and then kind of hit the ground running. We took this idea of finding a way to leverage our professional careers, Pernell and I, and merging it with our passion for coffee and tea. And that ultimately has manifested itself into what we know today as BLK Bold. So very similar to you, we had some real organic origins, started in Pernell's garage, roasting some beans, and we've now grown in an occupied commercial space that affords us to meet the moment. So it's been an amazing journey, and we really look forward to what's coming ahead.
Where were you professionally before this?
Yeah, so for about a decade or so, I worked in the nonprofit space as a fundraiser for academic and healthcare institutions. And Pernell, he'll expound upon his career, but really in the retail merchandising space for him.
Yep, so similar, about a decade, started my career in Target corporate merchandising for about close to 5 years, and then made the jump to join a brand called Shea Moisture, Sundial Brands, Black owned, one of the largest beauty brands. And of course at the time, Black owned, and was really passionate about their mission to ownership and representation within beauty, but also how to better democratize and treat the consumers with respect, more so than the way that the structure and the system of retail tends to do quite often, actually.
And where are you guys based?
We're based in Des Moines, Iowa. Rod's in Northern Cali right now, but he'll be heading this way soon. But we're both from Gary, Indiana. Grew up on the same street in Gary. I ended up, attending the University of Northern Iowa. Rod stayed in Indiana. From there we started our careers, and as my wife and I began to build our family, we moved from Houston back to Des Moines to be around family, so I can continue to push my career and where that led, whether it was traveling or entrepreneurial ventures, and still know that we had that stability. And so we come at the whole mantra of this business as friends first, as Black men first, and also seeing each other grow as a whole person, making sure we prioritize each other and ourselves while we build our passion and what we're going after.
Now that market, the coffee market, I mean, listen, everybody makes coffee. Listen, I'm not against that, because I came out in the market where everybody makes t-shirts too, because if everybody makes t-shirts, half of us be running around here butt naked. So thank God, right? And but what made you want to just brew coffee out of the garage? What and tea as well, right? But brewing coffee out of the garage and tea out of the garage. I mean, there's one thing to say, I like this cup of coffee. I'm home and I'm brewing it, and my people's like it. It's cool. Mm-hmm. But what makes it so special, and what made you feel like, what, I'm going to drop the careers that I have, and I'm going to follow this all the way through? There's something about being a fan of doing it, and then there's something about taking on a business.
For sure. The big piece for us, coffee and tea has been part of our adult lifestyle and career lifestyle for some time. And as we looked at how do we ultimately build a business around a value need of supporting disadvantaged communities across America that predominantly over-index on Black issues, us being from Gary, we wanted to make sure that we can have everybody participate in that, but also allow them their everyday habits to be that driving force of. And we immediately looked at what our habits were, and over-consuming coffee and tea on the daily, and going to all these different coffee shops and being a part of someone else's culture was great, but it really didn't align to our values. And so that's where we took our business approach of, well, Ryan has a lot of formal background in philanthropy, charitable giving, and how do we better structure and streamline that while also overlaying that with retail distribution and accessibility of. And when you look at the coffee aisles in grocery, they haven't been shaken up in quite some time. Specialty coffee is the largest or the fastest growing segment of coffee. mostly driven by the love that entrepreneurs have on their local coffee shops. But that premium doesn't cross over to where people are shopping the rest of their grocery list. And so our whole mantra was, how do you allow a consumer to have better access to top tier coffee for what they drink at the beginning of the day, but at the end of the day, know that they're impacting their community as well. And if you can take something and build it really tight with that integrity and then make it accessible, our main case study was, how do we get more people to then drink coffee at home, right? If we're making it accessible in brick and mortar and online. And so that ended up basically pivoting us to, the roller coaster ride we've been on with 2020, the coffee industry, in shops across the U.S., having closures because of state closures, and what we've compactly built over these 2 years, and to bring to market. There's a traditional way of marketing where you're going to find your core customer, and then there's the market looking to find brands like you, and that's kind of been the convergence of us for 2020 thus far.
Yeah, it's interesting. So you're the Fubu of Coffee.
I wear that badge all day.
That's an honor. That's an honor, man. Thank you.
But believe it or not, listen, when I came out with Fubu, when people said, "Oh, it's never been for us bias," I was like, "But who are you talking about?" Because if you look at it, listen, I don't care if you're a cheesemaker from Denmark. If you say, "Listen, my family's been doing this for 100 years, and we're the Fubu cheesemakers," you don't have to be a color. Because the Fubu can be a mentality, a demographic, a color, a gender, whatever the case is. But I think that maybe because I read up on you guys and I wanted to kind of talk to you guys, I think that maybe I'm too close to it, because when you laid it out at first, you didn't say about, like when you say that you are positively contributing to the community, in what way? Is it you're bringing people together who, or is it they have an image of people that look like them who in an underserved market who are now showing they can do it? Is it that you are contributing? And what ways are you building this community that, you said you're contributing to?
Yeah, so we have our 4-Hour Youth initiative that's tangibly brought to life by us contributing 5% of our profits to initiatives and nonprofit organizations that support domestic at-risk youth. And that is across a wide array of topics, whether it be impacting workforce development or eradicating youth homelessness and food insecurities, or just sustaining after-school programming. We wanted to find a way to support and amplify the efforts that already exist. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel. So we use what we do to ultimately highlight the work that's being done in these local communities.
Yeah. And the main piece, like how we further activate that, is being the roaster, right? We're the ones that, are sourcing these beans, working with our importer to bring them in, and then bringing a green coffee crop to, something that people ground and brew and consume. And so we have, whether consumer clients or independent shops or retailers, right, their reason for being as a business is how we tie that back to the nonprofits' reason for purpose, right? And so, boutique hotels that have a higher end clientele that would service our product, we turn those profits and contribute it back to homeless youth shelters within those communities. Our distribution partnership with Target that we launched at the beginning of this year, launched across the top markets across the U.S. That allowed us to turn on 11 pledge partnerships across the U.S. in these markets where we're supporting those workforce development initiatives that Rod talked about. And so it shows that being an example of how being in for profit, especially with partners that have a purpose in mind, can actually scale out further within our communities.
And that's with Target. You said you did a rollout with Target stores?
Yes. Target, now Whole Foods.
And now Whole Foods. Who else? Where else?
Hy-Vee in the Midwest here. Amazon. We launched with Amazon late last year, and of course, when we talk about the impact of the pandemic to the coffee space, coffee's clunky, it's locally accessible. Most people don't really shop coffee online, but that was part of our go-to-business model. And so with the pandemic, we fast forwarded our branding on Amazon, and 2 months later, we were the #1 new coffee brand on Amazon.
Wow, that's impressive. So that's what I was going to ask you. What other ways have you managed to, pivot and deal with challenges, whether whether, due to COVID or due to any traditional business challenges?
Yeah, Rob, feel free to share your take. But one of the biggest challenges for us, right? This was a business model that we needed to vet out, and we crowded coffee space. We're very aware of that. We know what we bring to the table, but you have to validate that to other people. And so we've been self-funded from the get-go, and hence starting from the garage, starting with a really low production capabilities, and then having a first commercial client. We we're able to lend some space in a local brewery and run extremely lean. And so is continuing to make sure we don't overstep what our runway is from what we're capable of, and not have to rely on, let's call it other people's validation on what we know we're building. One, because it doesn't exist for someone to compare us to, at least in this crowded of a coffee space. And then two, continuing to learn as we go, while stay sane and maintain our relationship at the same time. So,
well, I'm going to ask you one last question. I'm going to ask you, and I want you to think about it as I summarize what I've heard today, and how everybody else can learn from that. So I'm going to ask you, what advice for other business owners do you have today? But let me summarize what I just heard from you. Because, I love, the thing about Shark Tank, I love it. We get to go down a path with people, and we get to see if they're willing to put in the work or not, if they're worth the investment or not. And, and then we have to make a decision. But, if I really think about it, I mean, your story is two gentlemen that came from a very hard place, one of the hardest places to grow up in the United States, where talk about being marginalized, it's that's the understatement for Gary, Indiana. You moved on and you found different paths for a career. One is obviously working in the charitable space and other things. So you had a true passion that you just didn't do that for 1 year. You did that for 10 years, right? And you got these skill sets from these years of doing it. However, you had a passion for something that a lot of people have a passion for, but you weren't trying to go and launch a big brand. You just decided, I'm going to just start this in my garage. I'm not going to wait for any excuses. I'm going to give up what I'm doing, and I'm going to move here because I have such a drive and a passion for it. But you also start to realize that, it's the fastest growing segment of the market, and other people out there, no matter how many commodities are out there, other people need to see people who look like them, who are doing things, and know that every time they spend their dollars going back to the community, that's going back to help people. And to validate that, out of all the coffees out there, Whole Foods and Target and other companies get on to say, not only do I like the taste, but I like the mission, I like the way you're operating it. And after COVID came, when you were in coffee shop and other places, you still continued to pivot, and you became one of the best sellers of coffee on Amazon. So if you can show that, I don't think anybody else has an excuse. That sounds just like my story in so many ways. So during this time, people are looking for hope. You're an example of hope. I would love to hear what advice you have for other business owners right now. And I know you don't know it all, neither do I. And that's the best part of being who we are. We walk in the door still learning, right? So we know we're a little bit smarter tomorrow. What advice do you have for other entrepreneurs out there and business owners right now, or anybody?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, thank you for that. Really appreciate it. It's not often that we get to hear our story told back to us and then compared to one that has had so much success. I really do appreciate that. That's going to give me some fuel to keep going. But some advice that I would give is, similar to what you ended upon, is just to get out of your own way. We oftentimes get in our own heads and we'll miss the opportunity that was made for us. And so if you have an idea, if you have a passion, if you have an urge, I would say act upon that, because it ultimately could blossom into something that's beyond your wildest dreams. So that's what I would encourage people to do, not only as business owners, but just in general.
Yeah, don't suffer from analysis paralysis. All right, Pernell, what you got? What you got for them out there?
This is a common stated one, but I just add an example to it, and it's all about knowing your why. I mean, you mention this all the time. But the testament for us is, we're a startup brand that jumped on the main stage this year, bootstrapping, small team, already out kicking what our expected coverage was, and then when COVID hit, from a runway, we had less than 8 weeks that we could do anything. We had a team huddle, and the whole thing was, all right, well, we're going to go out 8 weeks swinging. And, so, we align that to how can we, impact the youth that are displaced from COVID as much as possible by doing micro campaigns, and it just continued to charge us for why we were doing this. Right? It's like, at the end of the day, it's coffee. At the end of the day, we'll find another job, right? But how do you make sure that your why is solid enough that you can believe in it while you're struggling? And you got to protect that too, because when you're not struggling, you got to continue to lean on that and not forget it as well. So it's I've always heard it, but you know, to have to put it to the test, is one that, you know, it speaks volumes and how it really mean. I mean, it really is.
No, I think that's spot on, and I would be doing you an injustice if we didn't, you know, because I didn't even mention the name Black and Bold, and of course, you know, like, where can you find it? How do people find you? And just let me know.
Sure. Yeah. Well, our website is BLKANDBOLD.com. We're found across Targets across the U.S., Whole Foods across the Midwest, as well as Hy-Vee, as well as Amazon.com. And so, you know, our whole ethos is, you know, continue to help, you know, whether it's businesses and consumers, normalize domestic social impact. And so if you're in the business arena, you drink coffee, if you know others that drink coffee, you know, we're here to, you know, extend our hand in helping us all make a better impact to our communities.
I appreciate it. And I can, of course, become a corporate account, right? You can send it to offices and something. I just want to make sure, because maybe I want to support you and I like it at home, but I want enough for the office. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
We got
All right, guys. I appreciate you, man. Thank you for doing what you're doing.
You got it.
Thank you.
All right, peace.